Nobody is talking about the nod. Everyone is talking about the throws, the completion numbers, the quotes that leaked through the usual channels after Cleveland's OTA session. But the detail that I cannot stop turning over, the one that actually tells you what happened in Berea more precisely than any statistic, is a single slow nod from a veteran scout standing on the sideline. A man with nearly 30 years inside professional football buildings. A man whose entire professional reputation is built on one specific discipline: not reacting. Not letting a May practice session move him the way it moves people with less experience and less scar tissue. He watched one throw, and almost against his own will, his head moved. Slowly, deliberately. No words, no celebration. Just that quiet, reluctant acknowledgement that what he had just watched required a fundamentally different response than the one he walked onto that field carrying. I want you to understand what that nod actually costs someone in that position, because once you understand that, you understand everything else. Veteran evaluators in NFL buildings are professionally constructed to remain unmoved. They have watched an enormous number of encouraging spring practices produce deeply disappointing regular seasons. They have seen quarterbacks who looked every bit like legitimate starters in shorts and helmets in May get systematically exposed the moment September arrived, and the real NFL showed up with real speed and real design and real consequences attached to every decision. Those repeated experiences build a specific and durable kind of armor. When someone wearing that armor reacts involuntarily, when the professional self-discipline they have spent decades reinforcing gets bypassed by something they just witnessed, the people standing nearby feel it immediately. Players feel it. Coaches feel it. And the collective understanding inside that facility quietly shifts in a direction that no official depth chart position can undo once it has started moving. Going into these OTAs, the Cleveland quarterback situation had a settled, comfortable narrative shape to it. Deshaun Watson was the experienced professional working to reclaim something that difficult years had taken from him. Shedeur Sanders was the talented young prospect who needed time, needed repetition, needed the kind of patient runway that every smart organization gives a rookie quarterback before placing the full weight of a starting role on him. That version of events felt responsible. It felt like the honest, measured read that avoids the trap of projecting too much onto spring practice. And it held, right up until the moment the ball was actually snapped and the people inside that building began seeing something they were not prepared to see. The first real signal was not a throw. I want to stay here for a moment because this part almost always gets skipped over in favor of the specific completions that circulated afterward. OTA practice carries a baseline energy that experienced evaluators learn to filter almost automatically. There is a constant background hum of coaches instructing, players communicating between reps, the general operational noise of a team working through installation. Veteran scouts process that ambient sound for exactly what it is. Background. Low information. Not worth concentrated attention. What reportedly happened when Shedeur began taking live reps is that the background noise simply stopped. Conversations happening on the edges of the field ended mid-sentence. Evaluators who arrived at Berea expecting to manage a routine developmental assessment stopped managing and started watching with the kind of focused attention you reserve for something that is genuinely demanding it from you rather than you choosing to give it. That atmospheric shift cannot be manufactured or performed. You cannot will it into existence through individual effort alone. It happens when a player reorders the room's collective understanding of what it is actually looking at, when the existing category no longer fits and everyone present recognizes that simultaneously without coordinating the recognition. That is what Shedeur apparently produced before he ever threw the throw that generated the nod. His footwork was grounded and consistent from the beginning, not mechanically flawless, but disciplined in a way that held even when installation reps were creating the kind of controlled chaos specifically designed to reveal where a young quarterback's foundation cracks under pressure. His eyes stayed downfield even when pocket simulations were collapsing the geometry into positions that make it genuinely difficult to maintain downfield focus. Those two qualities together sound straightforward when stated plainly, but they represent the essential dividing line between a quarterback whose instincts are wired toward survival and one whose instincts are wired toward execution. Most young quarterbacks default to improvisation the moment the pocket deteriorates. Their instincts, built across years of playing the game at every level, pull them toward drift, toward escape, toward creating time with movement rather than standing inside a compromised structure and making the right throw. The NFL punishes that default in systematic and merciless ways. Defensive coordinators design specific pressure packages to trigger it and then exploit the throwing lanes that open up as a result. The quarterbacks who can override that survival instinct, who stay inside the structure of a play even when the pocket becomes genuinely uncomfortable around them, those are the quarterbacks making decisions in December when everything is actually on the line. Witnesses reportedly described Shedeur demonstrating that quality with a natural comfort that coaches simply do not expect from rookie quarterbacks taking their first meaningful reps against professional defensive alignment. Then came the throw. Let me walk you through it carefully, because the specific details are what make it mean what it means. A pressure drill. These are among the most revealing evaluative tools available in spring practice, precisely because they cannot be fully rehearsed in advance. The sensory experience of pressure closing at NFL speed, of the pocket shrinking simultaneously from multiple directions, is something a quarterback must encounter in real time rather than simply understand theoretically. The speed differential between college pass rush and professional pass rush is not a smooth adjustment curve. It is a threshold. And crossing it for the first time at full speed is genuinely jarring in ways that reveal character before they reveal any technical skill. Most rookies fail these moments early in their professional exposure, not because their football intelligence is insufficient, but because nothing in their previous experience fully prepares them for what professional pressure actually feels like when it arrives at full speed, with no simulation buffer between them and it. Shedeur was facing that closing pressure when he made the decision that stopped the evaluators. Rather than retreating, the safe and completely defensible choice that nobody on any coaching staff would have criticized a first-year quarterback for making, he stepped forward into the collapsing pocket, moving toward the pressure, eyes locked downfield the entire time. I want you to slow down and actually sit with what that requires from a player in that moment. Moving toward the physical threat that every sensory instinct in your body is actively processing and registering as danger, while simultaneously maintaining the visual discipline and mental clarity to stay focused on the downfield structure of a play that the pressure was specifically designed to collapse. Two completely opposing forces pulling against each other in real time. The self-preservation instinct pulling hard in one direction, the execution instinct holding firm in the other. Choosing execution in that moment is not a technique that coaching can install in someone who does not already carry the cognitive and emotional foundation for it. Either that wiring exists in a quarterback or it does not. And it typically takes years in this league for it to develop, if it develops at all. His mechanics broke down the way they always do when a quarterback is delivering off-platform under genuine closing pressure. His base went unstable. His body was angled in ways that compromised the mechanical foundation his coaches spend months constructing. The geometry underneath him was wrong in the specific ways that normally produce off-target throws, tipped passes, or interception opportunities that defensive coordinators put on the highlight reel for their own professional satisfaction. And the ball arrived exactly where it needed to be. On time, in stride, into a window that had no reasonable right to be successfully attacked from that body position in that moment. The receiver never had to adjust a single step. He caught it clean and turned upfield without breaking rhythm. The sideline went quiet. Not the absence of sound exactly. The suspension of the running professional commentary that football people maintain as a constant functional habit, processing what they observe, filing it into existing categories, managing evaluations in real time. When that running commentary stops involuntarily, When it gets interrupted by something that does not fit the existing categories cleanly, it means something genuinely unprecedented just happened in that space. That is when the scout nodded. One slow, almost reluctant acknowledgement from the most professionally guarded evaluator on that sideline that the framework he had been using to assess Shedeur Sanders that morning was no longer adequate for what he was actually watching. Then came the second moment, and I want to give this one serious time because analytically, it carries even more weight than the first throw. A full team period. The defense aligned in a coverage rotation built specifically to eliminate the primary receiving option before the play could develop. A linebacker positioned in the throwing lane. A corner pressing hard on the boundary. The coverage rotating to compress all available options toward the short, safe, easily defensible checkdown. For any rookie on a new coaching staff establishing trust with the organization, the correct response to that defense is conservative. Accept the short gain, protect the football, take exactly what the defense is offering and nothing more. Nobody questions that decision. It is teachable, it is disciplined, and it reflects exactly the kind of judgment that coaches spend real time installing in young quarterbacks. Shedeur reportedly identified something inside that coverage rotation that the rotation was specifically constructed to hide. He introduced a deliberate half-second pause in his delivery. Not hesitation, born from indecision or confusion. Intentional manipulation. Using his body language and delivery timing as false information, feeding a specific read to a linebacker whose entire professional training is oriented around identifying quarterback intention before the ball leaves the hand. Half a second. The precise window required for a trained defender to commit his weight and his eyes to a direction based on what he believes he is watching. In that manufactured half second, a receiver drifted into a narrow gap in the rotating boundary coverage, a window that existed only because the linebacker had already been moved by the false information Shedeur's hesitation had delivered to him. The margin for the throw was small. Flat trajectory required. Tight spiral. Cross-body release mechanics. Timing precise enough that being even fractionally late produces an incompletion or something considerably worse than an incompletion. He threw it. The ball arrived perfectly. The receiver never broke stride. The sideline responded with genuine, unrehearsed emotion, and I want to be specific about why that particular quality matters so much. Football players watch quarterbacks operate every single day and develop extraordinarily precise internal calibration for the difference between a completion that stayed comfortably within normal margins and one that required something beyond normal margins to produce. That calibration is deeply accurate and cannot be convincingly performed. When it generates spontaneous, organic reaction rather than polite professional acknowledgement, coaching staffs treat that signal as among the most reliable information available to them. And this reaction reportedly spread to the defensive players on the field, which is the specific detail I keep returning to because it is the most significant piece of information in this entire account. Defenders reacted. And defenders are the hardest possible audience inside any professional football building. They are professionally and personally invested in not being impressed by the quarterback across from them. They develop through daily competition an extremely refined sense of the difference between a fortunate completion and a real one. When defensive players respond to a quarterback's performance with something resembling genuine involuntary respect, coaching staffs treat that signal as essentially definitive. Because if the people whose professional purpose is specifically to stop the quarterback are reacting differently, no organizational preference and no depth chart positioning can reverse the direction that evaluation is moving. Now I have to be honest about what one OTA session can and cannot establish, because this story deserves that honesty completely and without reservation. Spring football has generated more misleading conclusions than any other evaluation environment this league produces. The distance between looking composed during a controlled installation period and operating effectively when a defensive coordinator has spent a full week specifically targeting your tendencies, cataloging every throw you have made at the professional level, designing pressure to exploit the precise habits you have already revealed, that distance is enormous. It has humbled quarterbacks with far more obvious physical gifts than Shedeur Sanders possesses. The questions he has not yet answered are legitimate questions that demand real answers from real situations. What does his demeanor look like after his first genuinely ugly interception in a stadium, reacting to his every decision in real time? How does he process the adjustment when a coordinator builds an entire week of game planning around the tendencies these OTAs revealed? What does his body language communicate to teammates after he absorbs a full-speed hit from a starting pass rusher in a game with an actual record attached to it? Those questions are not designed to minimize what happened in Berea. They are the legitimate pressure test every young quarterback must eventually survive before the readiness conversation reaches any settled conclusion. And Watson's presence in this competition carries real weight that honest analysis cannot casually dismiss. He has managed possessions where entire seasons compressed into single decisions under maximum pressure. He understands things about reading professional defenses in hostile environments that no spring practice can meaningfully simulate. Veterans carry accumulated knowledge that reveals itself in ways invisible to outside observers, recognizing disguised blitz structures before they fully develop, manipulating coverage with pre-snap movement that only produces the right read for someone who has seen 50 variations of that same disguise. These things are real. They are not accessible to any rookie in his first installation period, regardless of how remarkable that period appeared to everyone watching. But what I keep returning to when I try to locate the full significance of what happened that morning is this: the change was not in one throw. It was not even in two throws. It was in the building itself. Evaluators who arrived expecting to manage a standard developmental process reportedly left discussing a completely different timeline. Teammates who entered that morning viewing Shedeur as a promising young player they were rooting for reportedly began responding to him with the specific quality of attention that players only direct toward a quarterback they are genuinely starting to believe in. And the distance between a rookie who shows managed, encouraging potential and a rookie who generates authentic belief inside an NFL locker room is not a distance that any organizational structure can manufacture or artificially close. Belief in a professional football locker room operates on its own timeline and eventually becomes impossible to contain within whatever official hierarchy the depth chart is trying to maintain. The scout's nod is where I keep arriving when I try to locate the single most honest signal available from that entire morning in Berea. More honest than any completion percentage, more honest than sideline celebration that might carry some element of performance. More honest than any press conference language that gets filtered through organizational awareness before it reaches the public. It was the involuntary reaction from the most skeptical, most experienced, most professionally self-protected evaluator in that facility that what he had just witnessed required a fundamentally different response than anything he prepared for that morning. That is not hype searching for a convenient host. That is recognition. The specific, reluctant, professionally costly kind of recognition that something is arriving in Cleveland earlier than anyone inside that building planned for or is fully prepared to manage. Cleveland entered this offseason with a version of events it was comfortable with. The veteran leads. The rookie learns. The organizational hierarchy maintains itself on a timeline matching the commitments already made. That version held until one morning of football made it considerably harder to sustain. Not because Watson has been formally displaced or any official declaration has been issued, but because the emotional arithmetic inside that building moved in a direction that every subsequent rep must now account for. Every sharp decision Shedeur makes going forward carries the accumulated weight of what was witnessed that morning. Every moment of composure under pressure adds to a case that was supposed to build slowly across years, but is apparently building at a pace nobody was fully prepared to handle. Training camp is where the real evaluation intensifies. The preseason is where it becomes visible to everyone who was not in Berea. But underneath all of it, that one slow nod from the most skeptical man in the building remains the most precise signal available. The people with the most experience and the most to lose professionally from reacting prematurely have already started asking the question the rest of the football world is only now beginning to seriously consider. How much earlier than expected is this actually happening? And when the answer becomes impossible to deny, will Cleveland trust what its own eyes have been showing, or wait for permission from a world that was not standing on that sideline when the scout nodded?